There are stories in the land etched into the very bones of the earth, tales of high kings and heroic warriors, of saints and scholars who lit up the dark ages. We think we know Ireland's story, a rich tapestry woven from myth, poetry and hard-fought history. But what if I told you there's a hole in that tapestry? A significant gaping void that historians have whispered about for centuries, a puzzle known by a strange and resonant name, the Zin Fine. It is a term that appears fleetingly, a ghost in the machine of Irish history, yet it hints at something profound, something deliberately forgotten or tragically lost. It's a silence that screams louder than any battle cry recorded in the great annals. Imagine standing on the hill of Tara, the wind whipping around you, feeling the weight of millennia under your feet. You can almost hear the echoes of the past, the feasting, the law-giving, the ceremonies. Yet, amongst all that noise, there is this persistent, nagging silence. The Zin Fine represents that silence. It is not a king, nor a battle, nor a tribe that we can easily place. It is an enigma, a historical black hole that draws in theories and spits out only more questions. For all the exhaustive research into Ireland's past, for all the meticulous study of its ancient texts, the Zin Fine remains stubbornly, tantalizingly just beyond our grasp, a testament to how much of our own history can be lost to the mists of time. This is not just an academic curiosity. It is a fundamental challenge to our understanding of Ireland's origins. The very name, Zin Fine, feels alien, not quite fitting the molds of Old Irish we are familiar with, yet it is undeniably there, a splinter in the historical record. Its obscurity is what makes it so compelling. It's a reminder that history isn't a complete and finished book. Instead, it's a collection of fragmented stories with some chapters torn out entirely. The quest to understand the Zin Fine is a quest to find those missing pages, to listen to the whispers that other historians may have dismissed as mere noise or scribal error. The journey to unveil this puzzle is a journey into the heart of what it means to be Irish, or indeed to be human. It's about confronting the gaps in our collective memory and acknowledging that the past is not a solid, unchangeable thing. It is fluid, shaped by who tells the story and, more importantly, who doesn't. As we stand on the precipice of this great unknown, we are forced to ask a difficult question. Was the Zin Fine a people, a concept, a secret society, or something else entirely? The search for an answer takes us back through the centuries into the scriptoriums of medieval monasteries and the windswept landscapes of pre-Christian Ireland. Our hunt for the Zin Fine begins not on a battlefield, but in the quiet, dusty world of ancient manuscripts. The earliest mentions are maddeningly brief, appearing as marginal notes, glosses, in texts from the 8th and 9th centuries. A monk, perhaps pausing from his main task of copying a legal tract or a religious text, would scribble the term in the edge of the vellum. One of the most cited examples is found in a commentary on the Brecon Laws, where the phrase Maran Zin Fine, like the Zin Fine, is used as a comparison but with no explanation. It's as if the scribe assumed any reader would understand the reference perfectly, a fact that only deepens the mystery for us today. These initial appearances sparked centuries of debate. Early antiquarians, writing in the 17th and 18th centuries, were the first to truly grapple with the puzzle. Some proposed that Zin Fine was a corruption of an older term for a forgotten tribe, perhaps one that was absorbed or wiped out by a more powerful neighbour before proper records were kept. Others theorized it referred to a specific class of people within the complex Irish social structure. Maybe a druidic sect that survived into the early Christian era, or a group of artisans with secret knowledge. These early theories were based on little more than linguistic guesswork and romantic imagination, but they laid the groundwork for all future investigation. The problem with these early mentions is their context, or rather, the lack of it. The term is dropped into sentences about land disputes, social obligations, and kinship rules, yet it seems to stand apart from them. It is used as a benchmark for something absolute or ancient, a kind of foundational concept that needed no introduction. This suggests the Zin Fine was part of the common cultural and legal vernacular of the time. For it to have been so widely understood then, yet so completely lost to us now, implies a sudden and catastrophic break in cultural transmission, a historical amnesia that is both profound and deeply unsettling. As scholars delved deeper, they noticed a pattern. The mentions of Zin Fine seemed to fade away after the 10th century. It's as if the concept, whatever it was, fell out of use or was actively suppressed. This chronological boundary is a crucial clue. It points towards a specific period of immense change in Ireland, a time when the old ways were being systematically replaced. The early theories, while speculative, were important because they recognized that Zin Fine was not just a random collection of letters, but a key to unlocking a lost aspect of the early medieval Irish mind. The challenge was, and still is, to find the right door for that key. Centuries of scholarship have been thrown at the Zin Fine enigma, yet it endures. Why? The primary reason is the scarcity of evidence. We are dealing with mere fragments, whispers in the margins of history. There is no Book of Zin Fine, no central text to explain its laws, beliefs, or identity. Historians and archaeologists thrive on patterns, on cross-referencing sources to build a coherent picture. But with the Zin Fine, the sources are so few and far between that building any kind of solid framework is like trying to build a house with only a handful of mismatched stones. The foundation simply isn't there, leaving every theory precarious and open to challenge. Furthermore, the nature of early Irish record-keeping itself presents a formidable barrier. History was not written as a dispassionate account of events. It was curated primarily by monastic scribes with specific agendas. They sought to create a grand narrative for Ireland, one that linked its Gaelic kings to biblical patriarchs and presented a smooth transition from paganism to Christianity. Anything that didn't fit this neat, linear story was often ignored, reinterpreted, or simply edited out. The Zin Fine, with its strange name and obscure meaning, may have been one of these inconvenient truths that complicated the official version of the past, making it easier to let it fade into obscurity. The very landscape of Irish history is also a factor. Ireland was never a single unified kingdom in the way we might think of one today. It was a patchwork of petty kingdoms, or tuatha, each with its own ruler, its own laws and its own traditions. A concept like the Zin Fine might have been intensely local, relevant only to a specific region or a handful of allied clans. If that region was conquered, its people displaced, or its ruling dynasty overthrown, its unique cultural knowledge could be extinguished in a generation. What was once common knowledge in County Meath or Kerry might have been completely unknown in Ulster, and so its memory was never preserved in the annals of a rival kingdom. Finally, the mystery has been perpetuated by our own modern biases. We often look for simple answers, for a single definitive explanation. We want the Zin Fine to be a tribe, a cult, or a place. But it might have been something far more abstract, a legal principle, a philosophical concept, or a social contract that has no modern equivalent. Our attempts to fit it into our preconceived categories may be the very reason we fail to understand it. The Zin Fine endures as a mystery not just because the evidence is lost, but because we may have lost the very mindset required to comprehend it. To really get a handle on the Zin Fine, we need to dive deep into the Old Irish language and the amazing stories that shaped the people who spoke it. The name itself is a bit of a puzzle. Fine is a word we know well in Old Irish, meaning a family group, relatives, or a tribe. It's like the very foundation of how Irish society was built, but Zin is the tricky part. It doesn't seem to have a clear origin in any Irish words we know. This has made some language experts think it might be a word from before the Celts arrived in Ireland, a leftover from a language spoken here even earlier, which then got mixed into the language of the new arrivals. If that's true, the Zin Fine could represent a very old, original group of people, the first relatives of the land. This idea fits right in with Irish myths, which are full of stories about different groups of people coming to Ireland over time. The most famous are the Tuatha De Danann, who were like magical, godlike people. They were eventually beaten by the Milesians, who are seen as the ancestors of the modern Irish. But what if there were others? The myths also talk about the Firbolg and the Fomorians, shadowy groups who were also overcome. Maybe the Zin Fine was another such group, whose story was so completely wiped out by their conquerors that only their name, linked to the idea of family, survived like a fossil stuck in the language. Think about how important names were in old Celtic traditions. To name something meant you had power over it. To lose your name meant you lost who you were. In the famous story, the Tainbo Quenga, the hero Ku Chulin has to kill his own son, who comes to him as a stranger and won't say his name. This idea of your identity being tied to your family line and your name is super important. The idea that Zin Fine could mean something like the true family or the ancient family is really exciting. It might have been a special title claimed by a group who saw themselves as the original, real people of Ireland, protectors of old beliefs from before Christianity, which later storytellers tried to play down. Another way to think about it links Zin to the other world, or Tír na Nog. This magical place was said to exist alongside our world. You could get there through the old mounds or across the Western Sea. Could the Zin Fine have been seen as a spirit family or otherworld tribe? This would explain why they are used as a perfect example in old legal writings. Their ways would be seen as ancient, perfect and unchanging, like a divine model that human laws were measured against. This would also explain why they disappeared from the records. As Christianity became stronger, such a clearly pagan idea would have been actively hidden by the monks who wrote things down. The mystery of the Zin Fine does not exist in a vacuum. It is, in fact, one of many ghosts that haunt the corridors of early Irish history. The pre-Christian era in Ireland is a vast and shadowy expanse, illuminated only by the reflected light of later Christian writings and the silent testimony of archaeology. Before St. Patrick and the arrival of literacy, history was memory, passed down through generations of oral storytellers. This was a fluid and fragile medium, and it is almost certain that entire sagas, genealogies, and the histories of whole peoples have vanished without a trace. The Zin Fine may simply be the one that left behind the faintest of footprints. Think of the Druids. Thanks to Roman accounts from Gaul and Britain, we have a dramatic, if hostile, picture of this powerful intellectual class. Yet, in Irish texts written hundreds of years after their power had been broken, they are often reduced to the role of sinister magicians or advisors to doomed pagan kings. Their true function as lawyers, scientists, philosophers and historians has been almost entirely written out of the story. The systematic dismantling of the Druidic tradition by early Christianity was so successful that we know almost nothing of their core beliefs from an Irish perspective. Is it possible the Zinfine was a specific Druidic order or a community that held fast to the old ways and was thus erased with particular prejudice? We can also look to the physical landscape for clues of other forgotten histories. Ireland is dotted with thousands of prehistoric monuments, dolmens, passage tombs and stone circles built by people about whom we know very little. The builders of Newgrange, for example, created a structure of breathtaking astronomical and engineering sophistication 5,000 years ago, yet their name, language, and society are lost to us. They were superseded by later cultures, their achievements absorbed into the myths of their successors. The Zin Fine could easily belong to one of these lost chapters, a people from the Bronze or Iron Age, whose identity was remembered only as a faint ancestral echo by the time the first monks put pen to parchment. This pattern of forgetting is a natural part of history, but in Ireland it seems particularly pronounced. The transition to Christianity and the subsequent Viking and Norman invasions created multiple layers of cultural disruption. Each new power sought to legitimize itself by controlling the narrative of the past, often by overwriting what came before. Other forgotten groups, like the mysterious Éire or vassal tribes, are mentioned in the annals as rising up against their masters, only to be put down and, well, seemingly vanish from the record. The story of the Zin Fine is the ultimate example of this process, a name that survived but whose story was completely severed from it. When the written record falls silent, we must turn to the earth itself. Archaeology offers a different kind of text, one written in stone, bone and pottery. While we cannot dig for a name, we can search for evidence of a people or a practice that stands apart from the norm, something that might correspond to the unique enigma of the Zin Fine. The challenge is, well, immense. It involves looking for anomalies in the archaeological record of the early medieval period, burial customs that defy typical Christian or pagan rites, settlement patterns that don't fit the well-understood Rath or Ringfort model, or unique artistic motifs that appear suddenly and then vanish. One intriguing area of research has been the study of Ireland's royal sites, places like Tara, Emain Macha and Dun Éilin. These were not just political centers, they were deeply sacred landscapes, used for millennia for inauguration rituals and seasonal festivals. Excavations at these sites have revealed complex sequences of activity, with older structures being deliberately decommissioned and buried to make way for new ones. Could the Zin Fine have been a group associated with one of these earlier superseded phases of ritual life? Perhaps they were the guardians of a cult that was violently replaced, their memory suppressed, but their name lingering as a half-remembered term for the old ways. Material culture can also provide clues. The discovery of unusual artifacts can sometimes point to the existence of a distinct cultural group. For example, if a unique style of brooch, pottery, or weapon was found consistently in a specific region and time period that corresponded with the marginal notes, it could be a tangible link to the Zin Fine. So far, no Zin Fine pot or pendant has been identified, but archaeologists are constantly re-evaluating existing collections with new questions in mind. An object that was once catalogued as merely anomalous might, when viewed through the lens of this mystery, take on a whole new significance. The most profound archaeological whispers may come from the study of human remains. Isotope analysis, which can tell us where a person grew up by examining the chemical signatures in their teeth, has already revolutionized our understanding of mobility in ancient Ireland. If a group of burials from the 8th or 9th century were to show a distinct dietary signature or a common origin from a surprising place, perhaps even from outside Ireland, it could suggest a unique community living within Irish society. If these burials also had unusual rites, we might just be looking at the physical remains of the people behind the name, a truly distinct kin group hidden within the broader population. To understand why the Zin Fine disappeared, we must step inside the minds of the men who held the keys to history, the medieval Irish monks. In their cold, candle-lit scriptoriums, they were not just copying texts, they were curating the national memory. Their mission was twofold: to preserve the learning of the past, but also to frame it within a devoutly Christian worldview. This created an inherent conflict. How could they celebrate their rich, vibrant, and deeply pagan heritage without undermining the new faith? Their solution was a masterpiece of cultural alchemy. They transformed pagan gods into mortal heroes, druids into evil sorcerers, and ancient rituals into quaint folklore. Within this context of careful editing, the Zin Fine becomes a fascinating case study in what gets left on the cutting room floor. If the Zin Fine represented a philosophical or spiritual tradition that was fundamentally incompatible with Christian doctrine, perhaps a belief in reincarnation, a pantheistic view of nature, or a system of ancestor worship that couldn't be sanitized, then it would have been marked for erasure. It couldn't be co-opted, so it had to be forgotten. The scribes may not have engaged in a grand conspiracy, but through a series of small, individual decisions to omit, to not explain, to let a term fall into disuse, they could achieve a complete silencing over several generations. The political climate of medieval Ireland was also a powerful shaping force. The great monasteries were not just centres of piety. They were wealthy, powerful institutions, often aligned with specific royal dynasties. The histories they produced, such as the Annals of Ulster or the Annals of the Four Masters, were often political documents designed to legitimize their patrons and denigrate their rivals. If the Zin Fine were a people or a political entity allied with a rival, losing dynasty, it would be in the interest of the ascendant power's scribes to write them out of the story, to deny their very existence and legacy. History, as always, is written by the victors. We must also consider the possibility of accidental loss. Manuscripts were fragile, subject to fire, damp, and the ravages of time. It is entirely possible that a key text, the one that explained the Zin Fine in detail, was simply lost. Perhaps a single codex held the answer, and when that book was destroyed in a Viking raid or crumbled to dust through neglect, the key to the puzzle was lost forever. The marginal notes that survive would then be the last tantalizing echoes of a much richer body of knowledge. The silence surrounding the Zin Fine might not be the result of a deliberate plot, but of a tragic accident of history, a story lost to a random act of destruction. Just as the memory of the Zin Fine was fading from Irish manuscripts, a new and powerful force arrived that would change Ireland forever. The Norman invasion, beginning in 1169, was not just a military conquest, it was a conquest of administration, law and record-keeping. The Normans brought with them their own feudal system, their own language and their own way of documenting the world. This introduced a new and perhaps final layer of obfuscation over the Zin Fine mystery, creating a cultural chasm that buried the faint memory even deeper. The world that had understood the term was being irrevocably swept away. The Normans were meticulous record keepers, but they were interested in things that mattered to them: land ownership, feudal obligations, taxes, and church appointments. They mapped and documented Ireland according to their own legal and cultural framework. The intricate kinship-based complexities of the Gaelic world, the world of the Tuath and the Fine, were alien to them. A subtle ancient concept like the Zin Fine, already obscure even to the Irish of the 10th century, would have been utterly meaningless to a Norman clerk compiling a land charter. The new administrative language and legal system had no room for such Gaelic ghosts, effectively sealing them in the past. Moreover, the Norman invasion accelerated the decline of the old Gaelic centres of learning. While some great monasteries continued to operate and produce works in Irish, many were reformed along continental European lines or fell into decline amidst the chaos of war. The invasion created a cultural and intellectual disruption. The focus shifted from preserving the ancient lore of the Gael to navigating the new political reality. The intellectual energy that might have been spent pondering the meaning of an obscure gloss in an old law text was now directed towards survival, diplomacy, and resistance. The Zin Fine became a riddle from a world that was rapidly vanishing. The arrival of the Normans also created a new cultural front line. In the centuries that followed, Irish identity became defined in opposition to the foreigner. This led to a flowering of Irish language literature that looked back, often nostalgically, to the pre-Norman Gaelic Golden Age. But this was a romanticized past. The Gaelic scholars of the later medieval period were looking to create a unifying history, a story of a heroic Christian Gaelic Ireland that had existed before the outsiders came. In this new narrative, a confusing, possibly pagan and deeply enigmatic term like the Zin Fine had no place. It was a detail that didn't fit the heroic story, and so it was left behind. Today the quest for the Zin Fine continues, fought not with swords but with new technologies and interdisciplinary approaches. Modern historians and folklorists are re-examining the evidence, bringing fresh perspectives to this ancient problem. Some scholars, using the tools of forensic linguistics, are performing deep dives into the structure of the name Zin, comparing it to Proto-Indo-European roots and the vocabularies of other ancient languages, searching for a plausible origin. Digital humanities projects are also playing a crucial role. By digitizing all known Irish manuscripts, researchers can now search for the term Zin Fine instantly, mapping its every appearance and analyzing its context with a level of precision previously unimaginable. Local folklore and oral traditions provide another fertile hunting ground. While the academic record falls silent, stories passed down through generations can sometimes preserve the memory of things long forgotten by official history. Folklorists are traveling the Irish countryside, talking to storytellers and community elders, listening for local legends of strange, ancient tribes or mysterious laws that might contain a distorted echo of the Zin Fine. These tales, often dismissed as superstition, can be vital cultural fossils, preserving a truth wrapped in the protective layers of myth. The name may have changed, but the core of the story might just have survived. The enduring allure of the Zin Fine lies precisely in its incompleteness. It is a mystery that invites us all to become detectives. It reminds us that history is not a closed book, but an ongoing investigation full of tantalizing gaps. These gaps are not failures. They are spaces for imagination, for questioning, and for discovery. They force us to be humble about what we know and to recognize that our ancestors lived in a world far more complex and strange than we can ever fully appreciate. The Zin Fine challenges the very idea of a single definitive Irish history, suggesting instead a mosaic of lost worlds, and so the search goes on. Perhaps one day a new manuscript will be discovered in a forgotten library, or an archaeologist's trowel will turn up an artifact that blows the case wide open. But even if the Zin Fine remains forever shrouded in mist, its value is secure. It serves as a powerful symbol of all that is lost and a potent inspiration for us to keep looking. I invite you too to join the hunt. Delve into the stories of your own local place, ask questions, share theories. For in the collective search for the Zin Fine, we do more than just chase a historical ghost. We keep alive the spirit of curiosity and wonder that connects us to our deepest past. I want to hear from you. Drop your theories in the comments or share your own Zin Fine stories. The true story of Zin Fine might still be waiting for us just around the next historical corner. Don't just watch, join the investigation.